Welcome to the Wisdom of Show. I'm your host, Simon Bowen, and every week I'm speaking to the world's greatest leaders, thinkers, and entrepreneurs about complex issues and impactful leadership. Join us in the Renaissance of Wisdom. In a world racing towards automation and obsessed with hacks and headlines, Bryan Adams reminds us that the letters more important than AI are EI, emotional intelligence. As co-founder and CEO of Integrity, Bryan has built one of America's largest insurance and wealth firms, powered by technology but grounded in humanity. His story begins in a small Texas funeral home and grows into a billion-dollar enterprise built on purpose, trust, and heart. In this episode, we explore how small-town values can scale globally and how technology with purpose transforms lives, and why true innovation isn't about replacing people. It's about amplifying their humanity. Welcome, Bryan.
Hey, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you. I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today.
I'm looking forward to the conversation. The seniors market, that age market, people at that end of life, insurance and wealth management, they don't have as much time for recovery if something goes wrong. And really it's all down to the wire now. This is what they've spent a lifetime organizing themselves for. Oh. And I just out of the gate, where are they being failed in the space that you operate in? What do we need to pay attention to, and what's going on for people right now at that stage of life?
Yeah, look, I think that's a really important question. I'm glad that you're starting with that. I think as you get older, there's two main concerns that you have. It's really your health and your wealth. And depending on really where your health is, depends on where you'd rank those two. And so I think one of the biggest areas of failure is in today's area of specialty that people want to really focus in on serving one area of need. People aren't serving, especially senior Americans, holistically when it comes to their health and their wealth. And for us, it's a real big passion point for us to make sure that we're holistically serving Americans with their life, health, and wealth needs, to make sure that we're taking an effect and really looking at the entire picture, because I really believe that those two things really complement each other, but also really impact one another. And so we want to holistically serve our clients with their life, health, and wealth needs to help them plan for the good days ahead.
It's interesting, you talk about specialization, and we've seen the emergence, for example, of medical advocacy for people, because they've got 2 or 3 or 4 clinical specialists all prescribing things relative to what they're treating, who's keeping an eye on that stuff, and so that holistic view across all sorts of things kind of matters. I've got an elderly mother, and certainly since my father died, her confidence levels has diminished in terms of dealing with decisions, and so complex decisions. Who do you talk to, particularly if you live on your own, and needing that advice, needing that help becomes even, more critical, more important. And so, the insurance industry, wealth management industry play a critical role, but they're off, they could be seen as slow moving. I mean, if you're not inside it, it could seem like it's a sort of a slow moving industry and resistant to change. But I know that you use technology, you're being on the front edge of trying to bring great solutions to market. What triggered what triggered this progression, if you like, that you're trying to create?
Yeah, first of all, if I go back to what you were just talking about, I lost my dad last year. And it was interesting to see in the last few months of his life how it all kind of culminated together, where you were trying to make sure that we were making sure he had the best health care, making sure that he had the best long-term care. And then at the end of life, we had to really make sure that we had the beneficiary designations right, make sure his life insurance coverage was in place. Even down to his trust and estate and everything from that perspective. So it really all comes together, and being able to walk my mom through that whole process and my whole family, it really proves to me that holistic care is really important. Now, I truly believe in specialists and making sure that you've got specialized coverage, but you also need to make sure that somebody's really looking out for them holistically, and that's something that we're really passionate about. How I got started is I started selling insurance door to door. I grew up in a funeral home in West Texas. My mom and dad owned funeral homes, and and I remember thinking as a young kid, my mom and dad would come home as small family business, and so they would come home at night when we got to have dinner together. A lot of times we didn't get to have dinner together just because they were working all the time. They would come home and then they would talk about the funerals and the families that they served, and it was always this kind of going back and forth of being surprised that this family didn't have any plans in place and didn't have a way to pay for that funeral. And for my dad, it was a calling. It was really, I wouldn't say a ministry, but it was a calling that he was there to help their families in those communities and making sure that they had the coverage that the funeral and remembrance that they needed. And my mom, it was really much more for a business. And she was like, I understand, but we can't just take care of their family. We got to take care of our family as well, because my dad would give away funerals. He would, barter, trade, whatever he needed to do to take care of that family. And so in college, I met this really impressive guy. I was working in clothing in the mall, and this guy came in and he was like, "Hey, you're pretty good with people. You ought to come do what I do." And I said, "What do you do?" And he said, I sell life insurance." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, man, I've wondered for so long, why don't more people have life insurance? If we're all going to pass away, then why don't we all have coverage for that?" And so I ended up starting working with him and just found my passion of serving people with their life insurance needs, which then really looking into what other needs they have is really came down to health insurance, and then now into wealth management as well, because as you get older, it really all comes together and people need to have holistic care when it comes to their life, health, and wealth. And so when you talk about how kind of behind this industry is, it's remarkable to see how far behind insurance in particular and wealth management and financial services holistically are. In fact, right now, at this very moment in the United States, we've got not just one agent, we've got hundreds of agents, maybe thousands of agents writing an insurance policy with a pen and paper and then faxing that into an insurance company with Fortune 5 insurance company, Fortune 5 companies. Some of the largest companies in America are insurance companies, and they're still using pen and paper and faxing. And so what we were able to do is say, what if we created the technology, the underlying technology, to make the agent's life easier so that they can go through all of the complex decisions, create transparency for the consumer to make sure that we're putting them in the best place, and then be able to hit a button and get that coverage placed through technology. And it's really revolutionized the entire process of securing life, health, and financial well-being for millions of Americans using that technology. By using technology, you also get the data that also you can anticipate the needs. And then with the most exciting thing that the world is talking about today, AI, being able to layer in artificial intelligence to really be able to leverage that and make our agents and our advisors super advisors, where they're able to do more, serve more people. This is just a time in history that I'm excited to be part of, and I'm passionate about what we do and excited about how much more we can do today with using technology, data, AI, but then also the purpose, the why that we do it is really an important part as well.
Yeah. So much for me to unpack from what you just said, apart from the fact that that's the first time I've heard the word fax used in a conversation for the better part of 5 years.
Listen, this is remarkable. I mean, it's remarkable that you're talking Fortune 10 companies getting thousands of fax machines. I'll give you a real example. We were working with a big group, a big agency that we support, and they came to us and said, they said, we're here to learn about your technology. Can we start running our business through your organization? And can we, instead of working directly with some of these big insurance companies, we like to work through you. And I said, why would you want to do that? What technology are you using today? And they said, well, we've got some really advanced technology. What we do today is our agents fax in their applications, and then we take those and we look at them and then we fax them to the insurance company. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. What we're going to be able to do to help serve those customers and to serve those agents, frankly, it's welcoming them into the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a bunch of stuff I want to unpack with you. I saw an article with you listing the top 100 CEOs. I think we should talk about purpose. I think we should talk
Yeah.
about team and culture. I certainly want to talk about AI. But it's interesting, this idea of holistic solutions for people. You're right, specializations are necessary, and often that's where breakthroughs occur.
Right.
But your clients may well be dealing with one of the most emotional phases of life and some of the big emotional events in life. And at the same time, I mean, even thinking about your parents and the funeral business, at the same time, someone's sitting there wanting to make all these decisions about estate and, wills and potentially, or insurances if they become unwell, or just life insurance policies and things like that. And we often, when we're in an industry, we often get into the business of the thing that we do, and we miss the emotion of the customer we're serving. And, holistic treatment is about recognizing the person, the human, and saying someone needs to look after you in the context of this thing, and we're going to do it. And you use AI and big data and things like that. What have you kind of just come across anything kind of unexpected in terms of trends or insights or market because of the data that you're using, the technology you're using? Have you seen some unexpected things or come across unexpected things you would never pick up if you were just receiving a bunch of faxes every day, right? And reading them and passing them on. What have you?
It's a really insightful question when you come up with that. So for us, we've got hundreds of thousands of agents and advisors throughout the U.S. We serve millions, tens of millions of customers and clients. And the way you're able to do that, and we work with the biggest insurance companies in America, and the way you're able to do that is by being able to leverage that scale. And now with technology, being able to give them a platform where on their iPhone, on their computer, on their iPad, that the client or the agent can serve the client from that perspective. Now, so that technology is the first piece. Now with the AI component, it accelerates everything because now you can serve more people so much faster from that perspective. But I think the letters that are more important than AI are really EI. And it really comes back to that emotional intelligence. So we've got artificial intelligence, but if you can combine that with emotional intelligence, where you're meeting people where they are, and empathizing with them and making sure that we're finding the right solution for them, it changes everything. And so for us, our purpose is really important. It's really about helping people plan for the good days ahead so that they're getting this holistic coverage with life, health, and wealth needs, so that they can make the most of what life brings. But it's really also about putting them first and meeting them wherever they want to be met. And so for us, we can meet people wherever they'd like to be met, whether that's in person, online, or over the phone, to help make those decisions and to make those confidently so that we can help them through that process. So let me give you an example. So we recently had an individual in Philadelphia. The individual called me and said, "Hey, my mom and dad have this health insurance plan that they're incredibly unhappy with. They had gone through a call center to enroll into this plan, and that call center was really focused on making sure that they got the coverage that they wanted to sell them. But they didn't take into effect all the other pieces of my dad's healthcare needs. And so now their specialists aren't being covered on this plan. So it made it really, really difficult. So what happens in that case is you go to your doctor and your doctor says, I can't take this health insurance coverage. And therefore you got to go find another specialist. Well, I can assure you, at my age, I do not want to go find different doctors. And I can assure you, people who are in their late 60s or early 70s certainly don't want to have to go through that because they've gone through, they've gone through this entire journey with that specialist.
Mm.
And so that's an unfortunate part of getting, put into a plan that didn't take into account all the different plan needs. And so he said, "Man, can you please help my mom and dad?" So I called them and I got some information from them. I took some basic information. I can tell you, they were so frustrated and so upset that this was happening to them, that she was almost inconsolable. If you really want to know the truth, she was angry. So I called the head of our president of our health division, who is an incredible leader, a guy named Ryan Kimball, who I trust implicitly. And so Ryan then calls one of our offices in Philadelphia, and he calls Craig Ritter, who's another incredible leader we have, and says, "Hey, Brian's got this friend. We've got to make sure it gets coverage in Philly. Is there something you can help us with? I want to make sure that we look at all the different plans, the national plans, the regional plans, whatever they need, to make sure that we put them in the right plan the first time." And so Craig called one of our offices in Philadelphia, and talked to a lady named Dawn who works for us there. And Dawn said, "Okay, I'll take it from here." So Dawn calls up this client and says, "Okay, based on the information I got from you that you talked to Brian with, um, we were able to look at this, and we've got great news. This plan will cover all your primary care physicians, but also your secondary, your specialist, through this. And looking at your plan, we can also save you money on your prescription drug components. And I can take care of this all right now over the phone." And this lady said, she was angry, frustrated. She said, "I will never handle this over the phone again. If I can't meet with you in person, then I will not deal with this." And Don said, "I can be at your house today at 2 o'clock. Can I come by today at 2, and we can take care of all of this in person?" So at 2 o'clock that afternoon, less than 24 hours since I talked to them, Don was at their home, met with them, went through everything that they needed, got them with the right coverage, right prescription drug plan, so that they were taken care of, and they're elated with that. And so with technology, we're able to discern that and find that quickly.
Mm.
But this is a people business. We're a business powered by people, that is really inspired by our purpose. And so you have Don, who's able to meet with them, and we could have taken care of that online. We could have taken care of that over the phone, but we were there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We met with them, took care of everything that they need, and they got the right healthcare coverage that they need. And so that's where I talk about AI can go so far. But to your point earlier, Simon, is that the people, especially around this need, they don't have that much longer to make any corrections, and their healthcare really matters, or
Yeah.
their wealth needs really matter, and so they need to get it done right. And so when you add in that EQ, or that EI, that emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
to go and meet with people and make sure you meet them where they are, you can really change the trajectory of that healthcare outcome for them in a big way.
Yeah. It's I loved, what you said in the middle of that. We're a people-powered business, but driven
Mm,
by purpose. And
yeah.
in this AI world that we live in, it's easy to actually lose sight of that. That AI should enhance and elevate people and relationships, not diminish and cancel them and delete them, if you like. And we'll talk about AI in a little bit,
Yeah.
because it's depending on where I'm having the conversation, people either see it as the greatest existential crisis for human existence, or it's actually a phenomenal tool. But I've been building a model while you were
And they may
talking.
say, and by the way, they may say the same. They may, in the same sentence,
They
say
do
that it's the
sometimes.
greatest existential threat and the greatest opportunity. You
They
never know.
absolutely do sometimes. And so, you work in this space where trust is everything, because
Yeah.
you are dealing with, I don't have the time for a mistake. Health is involved, wealth is involved. Um, I'm older. I've got some older principles of how I want to work with people, and I've been building a model as you were talking, and to explore this idea of trust at scale. And what you've already given me is that there's a compelling need that the individual has, and the need doesn't change. They have this compelling, self-evident need that needs to be
Yeah.
addressed, and they know in their gut, if then they're not having a conversation that's moving towards getting that need addressed. But at the same time, they're sometimes forced into how they engage and get access to the help.
Right.
And I think the first interesting thing you said was meet them where they are. Whatever
Yeah.
their choice is for how they want to access you, iPhone, iPad, computer. I want to speak to somebody in person, like meet them where they're at. So make it their choice for how they enter, how they access for a start. When we take that choice away, trust is already being eroded. I'm interested in the space in the middle. What are the you know 2 or 3 chunks in the middle that allow, because you are working through technology, people can be suspicious of technology. And I'd just love to unpack some of the key, almost for you, kind of non-negotiables when it comes to trust inside your company. Like, these are the things that are critical if we're going to build trust. Someone approaches us, however they access us, there's a need that they have to have resolved. In the middle, we are going to show up as the company they can trust to do that. What are the non-negotiables for you filling that space in the middle?
Yeah, well, first of all, I named our company Integrity for a reason,
Mm,
because I believe that there's power in that word. And I
mm,
believe that you've got to live by core values and you've got
mm-hmm.
to communicate those, especially if you're going to build a business. I started out of my house literally, and today, we're a really large US based company. And so you had to start with real strong core values that people understand, that people relate to, that people will hold you to. And,
Yeah,
and by the way, this is a really important point here, is if you're going to name your company Integrity, then
yeah,
you need to understand people are going to hold you to that, and we invite them to do that. It's a
yeah.
really big part of that. And so our core values are really uh, principles. I would say that they're unmoving, unchanging
Mm,
principles. And you've got to start with integrity, doing what's right, even when nobody's watching. And so that incorporates compliance, that incorporates the way we go to market, their ads, all the different things of that nature. Is integrity is embedded into that. Next is family. We serve American families, but we also look at ourselves, especially as our employees, our agents, our advisors, as one broader family that we want to make sure that we take care of. And then we serve American families in making sure that we're looking at one family at a time instead of all the millions of people we serve. You've got to look at each individual family as an important part of that. And so I remember when my dad went into the hospital, I was studying in the hospital room and realizing for one of the first times how impactful our services are.
mm,
And I remember texting our executive team and said, "Thank you for all that you do to work so hard, because I'm now one of those American families who are being served by the Medicare plans that we needed so badly there, so that my dad could get the coverage that he needed." Next is service. We're not a sales organization. We sell a lot of businesses. We sell a lot of products, but we're a service company. And so for that, it's really an important part of making sure that we're always looking to serve people more and making sure that we're taking care of their needs. in every aspect. And so we go as far as put our money where our mouth is on that is to say, um, every employee gets paid time off to go and serve in their community because we believe that that is one of those core values you cannot learn in an office. You can't learn in a classroom. You got to actually to understand how to serve others. You got to go serve others. And so we literally pay our employees, give them paid time off to go out and serve in their community,
Mm.
whatever they choose to do that. But for us, it's really about putting customers first,
Yeah.
putting our agents first, and serving them in everything that we do. It's about respect. It's about fourth is respect. It's about understanding that we want to treat everyone the way that God created them. So regardless of their financial situation, we don't really look at how wealthy someone is or how poor they are. We look at how do we serve everyone to make sure that they're getting the coverage that they need. And then finally, it's about partnership. And we take that to heart in everything that we do. We partner with other great companies. We partner with hundreds of thousands of agents and agencies. We partner with big carrier partners, financial institutions. And then even for our employees, I was really convicted by this idea of partnership that I said, we've got to make sure everybody looks and understands that we're all in this together. And so we actually became an employee-owned organization 6 years ago. And now a big part of our ownership of our company is owned by our employees. So that everybody from a janitor all the way to an executive owns part of the outcome of what we're building together. And I believe that combined, if you live by those core values, that are timeless principles, that you can truly accomplish more than you could ever accomplish on your own.
You just built a blueprint for companies. It's the integrity blueprint, if you like. Here's what I heard you say. If I play it back through the lens of a way of representing this visually, when you serve a market that has a compelling and self-evident need, and they know what that need is, but that need is inside a complex system that they can't understand. It's too big for them to understand. Too many players, too many components, too many moving parts. People have a need to get that resolved. They want resolution of the complexity so that they can have their health taken care of or have their wealth taken care of. And the critical part of this, if you really want to be a company that people trust, you have to create the ability for them to access you through their choice. Phone, iPad, desktop, in person, on the phone, whatever their choice is, you've got to give people control over their point of entry or their point of access. That sense of control over point of access allows them to feel like that they can stay in control throughout the process. And then there's three key components when it comes to building trust at scale. And that is a function of integrity. And that's really what integrity should be about, building trust at scale. It starts with core values, who you are as a company and what is non-negotiable in terms of the principles by which you operate. In other words, this is about who you are in private. And so the first thing people are going to see is the public face of the company as it behaves in private. A lot of companies don't realize that, but when people access you, they see the public face of the company as it is when it's in private. And so everything you do behind the door is the critical thing that makes sense. And then it's about being in service, both in service of the family of customers, but in service of the family of employees and people that work with you, and treating people one at a time. Everyone wants to be treated as an individual. So you're providing at scale, but you still need to serve at the individual level and be in service. And then no company does this alone. The curation of solutions is as important as the creation of solutions. And so it's in partnership. Who do you choose to work with and represent, both in terms of the right product? So, can you be product agnostic so that you make sure you get exactly the right product at any moment for the customer? You can demonstrate you're not wedded to a particular thing that you have to force them into, and the right companies. And so who are you in partnership and what are you in partnership with? The through line of trust at scale and building real integrity when people come to you is who are you in private, what do you do in service, and who do you work with in partnership to solve a need? So as you hear that back, which is what you just said to me, summarized into a model? Does that make some sense in terms of a representation of what you just shared?
Yeah, that's well done. Well done. That look, that encapsulates this very well. Now the interesting piece on this, if you take what you just sketched out here, which I couldn't have done better myself. When you build that at scale, especially when you build a product or service that meets people's needs and you meet them where they are,
Yeah.
and then you live life with integrity, and you make sure that you do what you say you'll do when you say you'll do it, which is a big part. And I think a lot of people they miss that when part. They miss that part of when I said I'll do it. And then what that allows you to do, or what it naturally, it doesn't allow you to do it, it naturally occurs, is that attracts other people who have integrity, who have that same purpose, who have that same passion, that want to join you.
Yeah.
And so today, 99% of the US population, this is a fascinating fact, 99% of the US population lives within a 6 mile radius of one of the integrity advisors. Because what's happened is when you put that out there, when you say, look, we're going to live life with integrity, we're going to be called integrity, and we want you to hold us to that. When you represent and partner with the right people, right companies, right carriers, right financial institutions, it attracts even more people to you. And so as you think about that model that you pulled up, that you just created, which is incredible, it's fascinating. When you layer on technology and AI, so if you get all of that right and you layer then technology, because we didn't talk about technology or AI
No, we didn't.
or anything, the economies of scale that you really build from that. When you layer that in, it becomes three-dimensional.
Yeah.
And then you can accelerate and serve even more people, attract more people to want to be part of your platform, but also be able to just meet people where they are, even in a bigger way. And so that's what I'm excited about doing, is being able to take what you've created here, then create that three-dimensional side with technology. And that's why, where people say, look, I'm scared to death of technology. Like, I get it. I'm kind of slow to conform in a lot of ways myself, or I don't understand AI. I don't understand what that can do. When you step into it to really understand how it can fulfill your mission and your purpose, even in a bigger way, man, I think it's an incredibly exciting time for us.
Yeah. So, maybe we should talk about, maybe we should stop saying, we all say, oh, let's get the tech right, get the tech stack sorted. But maybe we should be having much more deliberate conversations about technology with purpose. So not tech for tech's sake, but technology with purpose. The other thing that strikes me, which we briefly spoke about before we started the episode, and it really kind of landed for me, was this idea of transparency that you spoke about when we were just chatting beforehand. This, but an almost conscious transparency, as a company, consciously making transparency a feature of how we dialogue with people. And when people are living inside a complex system, and we all do, and the complexity of that system's gone beyond our own kind of knowledge and awareness, the only thing that we can hold on to that allows us to know that there is integrity is a transparency of dialogue. When we know nothing's being hidden, we know that everything actually is in front of us. And if we could just walk through it and be helped through it, there's a reason to trust. It's a pretty interesting conversation. So I just, if we talk about in partnership, you've built a big company. You have a lot of partners and agents and things like that you work with. You've created scale. You're a market leader. What are some non-negotiables for you as a leader of a large and scaling company that has a lot of other moving parts and a lot of other partners and players? What are some of the non-negotiables for you when you're choosing who you're going to be engaged with, who might work for you, et cetera, et cetera. I'd love to hear I'm sure you've got them. And
Yeah, look, at this stage in life, personally, I can speak really personally. First of all, you want to be around people that you can trust.
yeah,
It's interesting you brought up trust. You want to be around people that you can work with, you trust. Life's too short for the alternative from that perspective. So we've got something we call the campfire test. It used to be called, kind of a no jerks rule or no jerk policy, but we reframed that into a more politically correct term of a campfire test. And so imagine as you're working with people, there's certain people you can work with, but man, you don't want to hang out with, right? And you don't want to spend your weekends with, but are these people, especially as you're bringing in new team members, are these people who are going to really contribute to your long-term success? Are these people who are infinite minded, who want to continue to grow and expand, uh, and want to win, but want to do it the right way? But are these people that you'd want to sit around a campfire and have a beer with and introduce your family to? And frankly do life with. And so that's a big part of kind of part of our ethos is really this campfire test mentality is this somebody I'm going to really want to be be working with as much as I'm with my family. I'm going to have to work with them. And so is this somebody I'd want to sit around a campfire with? And I think that especially as you hire new individuals, new executives, um, it's a given that you're smart, you're talented, you've accomplished something. If you get to interview with us for one of our roles, that's kind of that's kind of table stakes. But then, can you take the people that get through that criteria, and then is this somebody that I really is likable,
mm,
somebody I really want to spend time with? And I think especially in today's fast moving world, sometimes we don't put enough stress on the likability factor as we do on what they can get for us. Like, listen, if we can work with people we trust, like, respect, that can live by those core values, uh, regardless of a lot of differences, man, you can accomplish. There's no limit to what you can accomplish together.
yeah, and trust, like, and respect are interesting, right? In a former career, I was a senior executive in one of Australia's largest companies, and I can vividly remember having a conversation with some of the junior managers and leaders underneath me. And it's as basic as, if you want to be liked, you need to be likable. If you want to be respected, you need to be respectful. If you want to be trusted, you need to be trustworthy, and people know. And, Australia, we, talk about Australians have a pretty good sensor for when they're not seeing a real person. You grew up in a small town in Texas. I don't know what small means to
Similar.
you. I grew up in a small town in Western Australia, but small in Western Australia is 900 people. I don't know what a small town in Texas is, but
1,800 people. So
just
close. Yeah.
really similar. It's intriguing to me how often over the course of my life, small town principles have proven to be some of the most important things I've brought to the table in negotiations, in leadership. In those small towns, business is the pillar of the community. The corner shop when you're a kid going down to get milk for your parents, and the guy gives you a couple of lollies because candy, because you walk down there, and people had accounts. You paid at the end of the month.
Yeah.
But those principles have played out over and over again. How much of that country ethos? I think the country is different to the city. It's a personal view, but how much of that country ethos do you think you might have subconsciously injected into integrity, as almost non-negotiables of trustworthiness, respectfulness, likability, without really realizing that that's where it came from? You told us about your parents, right? Your father
Yeah.
would give away the funeral because it needed to happen. Your mother needs to know we need to run a business as well. The business has got to be successful, otherwise the town doesn't have a funeral parlor. So how much of that country ethos do you think you've poured in?
Yeah, it's interesting when you're building a business, and you're coming up. There's this idea that it's a ridiculous idea, in my opinion, that you're self-made. And people celebrate this idea of self-made people, right?
Yeah.
So I started out with this idea of creating what was now Integrity, working out of my house, stressing over every detail, and just frankly praying like please, like, let this work, because it was so hard in the early days. um and so people now look at you and go, man, it's amazing how much you've accomplished. But you didn't accomplish any of that. I didn't accomplish anything that I've accomplished without a lot of people along the way. And some of them are the unsung heroes that nobody will ever know. But I remember, like, the guy who gave me my first loan to buy into a business, to do a lot of stuff that if he wouldn't have believed in me, that would never happen. If you look back at growing up in a small town, I didn't probably realize this or understand it until even after my dad passed away, or later in his life, that my dad, for the funeral homes, my dad had this incredible belief that this is the last time that this family is going to see this individual, and we've got to make sure that we do everything to respect them and to treat them as part of our family. And so one of the reasons my dad has a small business, and my dad tried to get me to go in and go to work for him one time. And I said I would do it if we could own 100 funeral homes, if I could build it at scale. And he said, how would you ever meet with one individual family at a time if they need to meet with you? And I was like, well, that's just not how I could do it. But ironically, now at Integrity, we talk about each individual family. We serve millions of people, but those are real people that we've got to think about, how are we serving that family individually. That came from growing up in West
Of
Texas
course.
and seeing my dad do that. My dad would insist that no one open the door themselves when they walked into his funeral home. So he had this little mirror in the corner of a window. And so if you saw somebody pull up to the street side, you would run over and get the door, and you would watch this mirror as they approached the door. You would open it right when they were walking up, and it was to welcome them like you'd welcome somebody to their home. Now, could people open their own doors? Sure, but it was just that little extra that didn't cost anything except just recognizing them with respect and recognizing them for coming in, or a lot of other things that my dad would do. My dad, you talk about people having accounts. I remember I thought it was ridiculous growing up. My dad, so we would have local businesses that you would have things on account where you could charge it, charge your gas to. It was a co-op. They called it a
Yeah.
cooperative, where all the farmers come together and you can fill up with gas there for cheaper. So you go down to the co-op and fill up with gas, and then you get a monthly bill. And instead of mailing that in, now my dad was relatively cheap, so maybe he didn't want to spend the money for the stamp, but he would drive around once a month and pay all of his bills and walk in and hand them the cash or the check to pay the bills. And I would remember my dad would take me and my sister a lot with him to go around those. And I think part of that was just making sure that they knew, hey, I'm here to take care of it. And I want to tell you, thank you for the service you provide. And that's just recognizing people as people. And he would literally go in, he would never miss it. He would go in and tell them, hey, thank you so much for all that you do for me and my family. Here's my, my payment for this month. And those little things you don't get in the big city. I'm in Dallas. You don't get that in the big city. In fact, there's people in our neighborhoods today that people don't even know their own neighbors,
Yeah.
right? And so that's something that my wife and I know have consciously, tried to get to know all of our neighbors. We try to get to know our neighbors. We've lived in the same place for, 20 years. So we've tried to get to know them incredibly well. We know, so if something happens to them, we want to be the first one there to take them food if they're having surgery, or if they lost a loved one, or just those small town values that I think there's good and bad in a small town, but I think there's more good than bad in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I am eternally grateful for growing up in small rural communities, not unappreciative of it. And there's good and bad in every community, but if large companies could instill some small community
Yeah.
principles, and let's unpack the ones that your father spoke about. How would you ever meet with every family? Well, you did that. When someone had an issue, within 24 hours, you had a relatively senior person in her house at 2 p.m. Now, you didn't meet with her, but you were the trigger of someone meeting with her, and there's this direct connection. How do we open the door and welcome everybody into the business? I mean, that is the front end of marketing in the world today. And since we've moved to the internet, and now we're moving to AI agents, making sales calls and things like that, are we moving toward or away from opening the door and welcoming people into the business? So technology is fantastic, but use it well. What was really fascinating for me on that story about your father was the respect he had for the suppliers. And are we as respectful towards suppliers sometimes as we need to be, or are they a disposable unit put into the accounts payable system? We're going to take 90 days to pay that, and yet they're the people you're in partnership with, who chart your ability to actually deliver what you're promising to the marketplace. I think there's almost a book in that, Big Business Done the Small Town Way, kind of thing. You're very interested in purpose and legacy. It's legacy is almost a commoditized conversation today. A lot of people go, "Oh, we have a purpose, and this is the legacy you want to leave," and it's those words have lost some of their power because they've been overused by marketers. Actually, I'd love to tap into this idea of running a large company from a very purpose-driven place, as opposed to just the profit-driven place. So, purpose and profit walking hand in hand. I'd love to unpack that a bit with you.
Yeah, so it's an interesting point. On the profit side, people there's some great books out there on this, but profit is a byproduct, right?
Yeah.
You've got to start with why. So I love Simon Sinek. I love start with why. You've got to have purpose in the beginning. Now, not to say you can't make money. Look, there's a lot of successful businesses that start with the purpose of making money, and not purpose. They start with, the reason they're in there is they want to get rich quick and do all those things. Look, good luck to them. For me, the whole concept of money is a byproduct. And that's a great byproduct. It's an interesting byproduct, brings a lot of different benefits to life. But you can never start a business, in my opinion, successfully long term with just the sole profit purpose. And I'm happy to debate anybody in the world on that at any time that they would like, because I believe that if you want to build a business that lasts, you've got to have that purpose. And so for us, it's really about holistically serving people with their life, health, and wealth needs, to help simplify that entire process, to help it become easier to understand, more beneficial, and ultimately more human. And you can't forget that human aspect of it. And for me, it's really, so I just turned 50. I know I don't look that old, and I look really, just kidding.
I've got a few
I can't believe
on
I can't believe I'm half 100. It is it's hard for me. For me, so what I talk about a lot here is I want to build a business for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that, and I challenge our team all the time, is what are we investing in today? What are we doing today? What are we innovating today to build this for the next 50 years? Because I know I won't be here in 50 years. It's physically impossible, I think, that I'll still be sitting here doing what I do. in 50 years time. And so I want to build for that next generation. I want to make sure that we're thinking about that legacy. And so I think I probably stress and think about legacy as much or more than most people, because I really want to make sure that if you're going to build something with integrity, that you want to build that so that it outlasts you. That
Mm.
if you're building a business with purpose that's really focused on serving others, of meeting them where they are, then you've got to be willing to adjust when new technology. You've got to be able it comes out. You got to be able to innovate. You've got to be willing to change things when you need to change things, or transform things that need to be transformed. But you've got to build it for the future. And I find that 100 years. I started out thinking 100 years. I think 100 years is too hard for most people to comprehend. But look, I mean, for most of us, we can remember 50 years ago,
Yeah.
and we can remember, like, okay, what's it going to be in the next 50 years? And so that means we're going to have to be making some of those innovations and some of the investments today so that we're here. And then you've got to really be building that out. And so for us, and you've got to look, that costs money, like that costs time, resources. And so for us, I mean, we've invested in a leadership academy that if we were just profit driven, it makes no sense to spend the millions of dollars we do on building out a full-on leadership academy with the Zig Ziglar Corporation, who was an icon of mine, and working with Tom Ziglar, his son, on building this out. And we've now taken over 2,000 of our leaders through an intensive leadership training that's ongoing, a year-long program that we want to make sure that we're really investing long term into leaders so that they can replace us, and they can also carry on that charge that we've got. And that's also spending the incredible resources we have to innovate on technology. We don't get paid anymore to create the technology we use. But if it's our purpose to meet people where they are, make it easier to understand, more simple and more human, then we want to invest in that today so that we can serve more people. And that's how you're able to scale and do some of the things we're able to
Yeah.
do. And so that's part of legacy, is really not thinking about the byproduct of profit, but really thinking about the long-term outcome of legacy. And that's another example is our integrity foundation that we've literally are building playgrounds, building, working with children's hospitals, where we've created an incredible uh, 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 assistance program so that our agents and our employees and other people can access, if they're in times of need, that we can be there to support them and serve them. And that's, again, just part of building a legacy based on integrity, which I'm incredibly passionate about.
Yeah. It's interesting. People often say, I can tell, you can tell where someone's focus is pointed by just checking their diary.
Yeah,
And that's
sure.
true. But
And their checkbook. And their
yeah,
checkbook.
well, I was just about to say, you can probably
Yeah,
tell where someone's purpose sits by looking at where they put their resources.
yeah,
So where you point your time might tell us where your focus lives, but the true purpose might show up in terms of where you point your resources, where you
yeah.
actually point the
Well
checkbook, as you
said.
say. So, can we drift into AI just a little bit? You're a very
Yeah,
technology-driven company. You make great use of AI. We said before it
yeah,
could simultaneously in the same conversation be the greatest existential crisis to humankind, but there's no doubt it's an unbelievably productive tool. And we are seeing industries that are, wiping out jobs. We just had a recent story in the press here in Australia that one of our biggest banks, if not our biggest bank, replaced an entire group of people with AI. These were 20 plus year employees. And then about 4 months later, walked that back and said, we made a mistake. We hadn't taken everything into account that you all do, and we'd like you to come back. Now, those people, without really realizing it, had spent the months prior to it training the large language models to take their jobs from them. So trust is obliterated for a start. We were happy to do this when it seemed like it made economic sense, but when we found it didn't, we want to walk it back and have you come back. And so, I think we're in the middle of that phase of responsible use of AI because it is an unbelievable tool. I'd love to get your perspective on how you think about AI for your company as a leader, because it is a pivot. It's a market positioning pivot to be able to do that, but it brings great responsibility with it as well. And you're trying to create a family-focused, family-oriented, human-centered business powered by AI. I'd love to get your insights into that.
Yeah, look, it's a complex question in a lot of different ways. I think first of all, my viewpoint on AI is, um, look, I think this is going to be one of the most incredible opportunities that we've ever seen to really scale faster. And people who embrace technology and who really embrace the aspect of using these artificial language models to really scale and meet people where they are and serve more people. So a business like ours, I can't speak to other companies or other businesses or under other industries. For a passionate person and organization like ours that's here to serve other people, if we can leverage that AI to go out and meet them where they are and serve more people, then we can accelerate what we're doing. And so, for instance, we call our whole platform Ask Integrity AI, Ask Integrity, so that our agents can be going to prepare for a meeting with the client and they can say, remind me about the last time I met with them, or give me a summary about this. And so our Ask Integrity model will then, as one of our advisors are about to go meet with the client, they say, yeah, you met with Simon last year at this time, and he was concerned about these different areas. Simon is married. He has two dogs. His dogs are named Cody and Caesar. And here is some of the other healthcare issues he's got, or his financial concerns he had. So that when I go and meet with you, I can say, hey, man, how's Cody and Caesar doing? Now, just that personal aspect. I mean, that's what small town farm kids do, right? They remember your dog's name or they talk about your kid's soccer class or scoring a goal. Say, oh, last time we talked, you talked about Sally scoring a soccer game at the soccer game. Is she still playing soccer? Now that creates this bond between us in a lot of ways. And so that's just using like some basic AI that we can recap in a lot of different ways, but then goes further to whenever I'm talking to you about. So for an instance with your healthcare, that example I was giving you before, what happened is that client called into a call center, nothing against that call center, but that call center, they said, okay, here is my primary care physician. They said, oh, based on that, you should use this health insurance company and this health insurance plan. It's really not their fault that they didn't really understand the broader healthcare, but if they would have just asked a few more questions, we could have been able to benefit that client in a much better way. And so for us, we want to understand what prescription drugs are they on, what other specialists they might find. And so the average American senior goes to about 6 different specialists. So in that case, if I just put you in the plan that your primary care physician would accept, I might have missed a lot of your healthcare needs, and that's what happened. So by going in and saying, what prescription drugs do you have? So most people can't even spell or say what prescriptions they're on. And then you add in like the generic versions of those, and it becomes incredibly complex. So what we do is we're able to say, okay, I'm on this prescription drug, and then it'll pop up and say to our advisor, our agent, ask them if they also go to this specialist. So it could be obscure, especially like rheumatology.
Yeah.
It pops up and say, do you go to a rheumatologist for this? Oh yeah, I forgot. I go to a rheumatologist. I've only seen that doctor twice in the last year. I can't remember its name. Then we pop up that all of the rheumatologists in that person's area and say, well, is it one of these? Oh yes, that doctor. I that's the doctor I go to. Click on it. Well, now instead of it being this carrier that would better cover them, because we add in that other piece of information, now we might say it's not XYZ, it's ABC that you need to go to because that'll cover your primary and your specialist as well. And so we're able to leverage that to give better outcomes, to anticipate what those needs are. We're also looking at, some of the data that we get from that is, somebody with diabetes, for instance, just to pick one. A lot of times people who are diabetic aren't able to get great life insurance coverage because they've got other morbidity issues.
Yeah.
Well, but if treated properly, if you have the right, if you're taking the right insulin dosage, if you're on a constant glucose monitor, if you're going through all these things, your health and life expectancy can just be as normal as pretty much anyone else's. And so what we've been able to do is work with our insurance company partners to say, if somebody has these type of needs, could we create a new life insurance product to cover somebody who's on a continuous glucose monitor, taking their insulin with a pump or some regular basis? Can we give them life insurance coverage with lower premiums to make sure that they get that coverage? So we're able to use all of that, even with our insurance company partners, to make sure that we're meeting people where they are and to give them the better coverage that they need as part of that. And we're just scratching the
Yeah.
surface, frankly, as part of that.
What is interesting for me in that was how much of the focus is on using AI to enhance the human to human, connection and the human to human outcome, as opposed
Yeah.
to just, problem to outcome scenario. The moment you just use AI to here's the problem, here's the solution, and you lose the human to human connection because, humans are still analog creatures living in a digital world. We want to interact with other analog creatures, which are other people. So it's why people crave the affection of dogs so much because they just give it to you no matter what sort of thing. They just crave that analog full range of emotion connection, if you like. Your father had wisdom, which I'm one of 45 first cousins. I had many aunts and uncles, and so they all were full of wisdom. So let's steward some wisdom forward in two ways. And imagine now I have a few years on you. So let's imagine we're talking to younger people, two different younger people at the moment. One is a younger person whose parents or parent are senior and they're heading into that phase rapidly, and it's becoming that period now where the offspring are going to have to step into some responsibilities here and probably some action and things like that. Parents may still be making decisions, but that period of time where the balance starts to shift. What would you be saying to that younger person to kind of equip them with something to hold into their head so that they're always going to be there in the right way to help a parent who's heading into the senior stage of life?
Be open and honest about it and step into that moment. It's a weird change. At least it has been for me. I shouldn't project that on anybody else, but for me, you grow up, you rely on your mom and dad for everything. And if you got a problem, you call them, go, man, I've got you. Can you help me with this? Or can you have any advice for me? Well, then there's this moment to where it shifts to where they start calling you and saying, hey, I'm doing this. What do you think? Right. And now for me, it's gotten to a point where my mom brings me everything and says, here's all the stuff I just got. Can you go through this for me and figure it out? And so it was a weird shift. And so for me, it was something that that really setting down. I sat down. I've got one sister. We sat down as a family and said, okay, look, let's start really planning for this and try to get ahead of it. And I don't think there's um, too much advanced planning you can do, because even with as much advanced planning as we did, we still didn't do enough, and you still have questions, you still got things that you got to prepare for. But getting ahead of that, and then also just being open and honest and saying, okay, I'm going to handle these things, you're going to handle those things. Let me know how I can help you. Is a really big part of that. And then also just getting their story down. For me, it was one of the greatest gifts that I did for myself and for, I think, future generations. Is I have this great friend in Utah that owns this business that creates family memoirs, and he
Mm.
had just started this business, and he said, "Yeah, I'm doing this business." He said, "I'd like to, try this out. Could I come and do something with your family?" And so I had him come out, and he shot a family memoir of my mom and dad, which was almost like a little mini documentary that went back to like their childhood,
Mm.
went back to how they met, went back to, the struggles they had in starting their own business, to the struggles they had with raising me and my sister, and then, on to present day. And we shot that video. My mom and dad were incredibly against doing this. My mom in particular, she was like, I don't think anybody's going to care about this. And we shot that video 9 days before my dad went into the hospital and never came out. And talk about just a blessing for the generations ahead, for me and my family. And it was just this kind of, literally a mini documentary that my aunts and uncles had never heard some of these stories. So as we played that at my dad's funerals, they were like, I never heard this about my my grandparents or my great grandparents or whatever. And so it was just really incredible. So I would say, step into it. It's one of those things that nobody wants to have to go through. Nobody wants to have to deal with. But stepping into that moment and being open and honest and being raw and vulnerable is really an important part of that. And then also being their advocate is a big part of that. Being
Mm.
their advocate when it comes to their healthcare journey, being their advocate when it comes to making sure they got great life insurance coverage, being their advocate when it comes to managing their wealth and retirement, and just making sure that they're treated with dignity and respect and
Yeah.
everything that they have is really an important part. And I'd encourage that in a big way.
Yeah, and I would absolutely agree. You know, through our own journeys as well. We were fortunate; we had the time with Dad. Kind of about 3 years. We knew that things were pending, and
Yeah.
it's little things like I didn't know what his favorite color was until I asked him. Well, that's kind of an
Yeah.
important piece of information, right? You don't
Yeah.
think it is until things are kind of moving along their path. So leaning in is great advice on anything, but leaning into the lives of your parents. We think we lived through extraordinary times, but you know, Dad lived through World War II with his older brothers going
Yeah.
away. They lived through extraordinary times. Everyone's life is extraordinary. Lean in on it. So let's point this wisdom at another
You,
young person.
before you
Yep.
move on to that, because that's important. And it's also important to recognize some people don't have the benefit of time. There's tragedy that
Yeah.
happens. And so really doing everything you can to remember them well, even through that is an important point, because a lot of people don't have that benefit. But what was your dad's favorite color?
Blue.
Mine too. My
Yeah.
dad's favorite color was blue as well.
Yeah.
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 But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter, but it's a way to honor them and to remember them in such a way. And I believe everybody has this inherent need to leave a legacy and be remembered. And sometimes it's, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite vacation spot? What's your,
Yep.
what would you want to tell your kids or your great grandkids or whatnot? And so I think that's great that you did that, man.
Well, because we're remembering the human, right? The person with the detail. And
And
so,
that's where artificial intelligence will never. Look, people get afraid of artificial intelligence replacing them. And what I say all the time is that it's not artificial intelligence that will replace you, it's people that use artificial
Yeah.
intelligence will replace people who don't use
Yeah.
artificial
Yeah. That's
intelligence,
right.
because they can't replace that, favorite color. They can't replace, understanding the human nature of that.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just need to take a moment to say, you know, what was it?
Yeah.
Or what is it?
Absolutely. And so let's point at another young person. This is a young leader, relatively early in their career. And what question would you equip them with that they should almost ask themselves daily as an emerging, evolving leader? What question would you equip them with? Put this question in front of yourself every day.
I think the most important question that you can ask yourself, ongoing, and pressure test
Mm,
this with, is a one word question. There's not many one word questions, but why?
yeah,
Um, we talked about Simon Sinek there for a minute. Simon Sinek wrote this great book called Start with Why.
yeah,
And I think it's such an important question for a lot of different areas. I think first of all, you need to understand why you're doing whatever you want to do, or really what is your why? What motivates you? And in today's world, especially as we get more tech, we get more AI, we get, faster pace. I look, I grew up where I remembered the typewriter,
yeah,
the fax machine, and memos. Like
yeah,
you remember when people would send a memo to people, right? Um, Now people are text message, Slack, email. I
yeah,
mean, email's kind of slow,
yeah. It
in a lot
is.
of people's time frame, right? So, um, but coming back to like that, why do you do what you do? And so for us at Integrity, we talk all the time about our why.
Yeah,
It's really always got to be about serving Americans, helping them plan for the good days ahead. So I think always looking at that why. The other part is, you don't have to do anything in this world. One of the most powerful things Tom Ziegler taught me one time was I said, man, I have to go to this thing. And he was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. My dad would tell you, this is Zig Ziglar,
yeah,
one of the greatest, leaders of all time. He said, my dad would change one word to that. And he said, I wouldn't say you have to, I'd say you get to. Now, when you change that one word to I get to go to this, it changes your whole paradigm, on different things that you do. And so I think if you really think about, okay, what is my why? What is my purpose? And understand, like, I'm going to chase after that. The other part is man, I really value people who ask why we do things this way. And
yeah,
I'll give you an example. I was recently in a meeting, and I said, why aren't we doing things this way? And one of the ladies who's been with me a long time, she said, well, because this is the way we've always done it. This is how it's always been done. I said, you know what? I created that process in 2007. I made that up because I had no other thing. I couldn't figure out anything else. And it was a bad idea in 2007. And so, because that's the way we've always done it, doesn't mean that that's the way we should keep doing it.
yeah,
And so, people who ask why a lot, now look, they're the people who aren't the most compliant. They're going to push back on certain areas. They may be wrong and frustrating at sometimes, but man, people who ask, like, why are we doing it like this? And is there a better way to do it? Man, I think those people excel in every environment going forward.
Well, even if it's just to get back to origin of thought, like where did it
Right.
start? Well, I started in 2007 and I made it
Yeah.
up.
And it was
So
a bad idea. It's because it's the only thing I could think of.
yes. We're right at the end. I want to ask a couple of quick questions so that, just quick fire, questions for people to know a bit more about you. What's a book that you've recently read and loved, and why?
Yeah, look, I read a lot. I believe that, you can learn so much from others. I'll tell you, The Elon Musk book by Isaacson is fascinating. It's a massive read. Fascinating. Talk about a guy who asks the question why a lot.
Mm.
That book's just fascinating about him. I read the Bible a lot. I think that there's a lot of wisdom that you can learn. Speaking of wisdom that you can learn from the Bible, I think a book that would resonate for me that I would also recommend was a book called Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. It's
Oh,
kind of a
yeah.
follow-on to the question why,
Yeah.
and it really talks about that most of life is played within the finite game, which people talk about like they look at things called the finite game. So it's like playing football, whether
Yeah.
that's soccer or American football. There's defined boundaries. There's defined scoring mechanisms. There's defined penalties. There's people to enforce those penalties, and so a lot of people try to play business or life within kind of defined boundaries. What this talks about is the infinite game. So that's the finite game, the infinite game. In the finite game, I win, you lose, I win, whatever that is. Uh, in the infinite game, we can all win.
Mm.
There's no defined boundaries. In fact, you're not playing just to make it to the next quarter. You're playing to make it for the next 50 years. And I feel like that infinite game mentality is something that resonates with me and our purpose here at Integrity and our passion to serve people long into the future. And so I'd really recommend that book highly.
Yeah, I Simon references where he got that original thinking from. I think it was Passe and his academic work on finite and infinite games. And
Yep.
what sticks for me is the objective of the finite game is to win. The objective of the infinite game is to keep the game going.
Keep playing.
Yeah,
Keep playing. Keep
yeah,
going.
and that
Yeah.
just to me is a great summary of a lot of things. One last question. You might have already answered it. What I'm pretty sure when you were a child, you didn't go, "Hey, I want to found and lead insurance and wealth company." What did you want to be? You said, "Oh, I could run funeral parlors and have lots of them all over the place." But what did you want to be when you were a child looking at the world?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I for some reason I fell in love with um, the heart. And so I wanted to be a cardiovascular surgeon. And so I read books by Michael DeBakey, I'm sorry, Dr. DeBakey, Dr. Cooley. I got to know Wayne Isom, who's a massive doctor, probably came from Dr. Isom. He grew up in the same town my mom was from, another small town in West Texas. And then he was operating on Kings and Presidents. And so I really wanted to be a cardiothoracic
How
surgeon. It
old are
was
you at
something
this stage?
I was young. I was in probably elementary or junior high. And so um, every science fair project, everything I would do some about the heart and what and then I quickly figured out that I wasn't smart enough to make it through that much school. So that was not my gifting on that part. And so I decided I'd just rather be a beach bum. And so I was like, I'll either be a cardiologist or a beach bum. And turns out, I've got too light a complexion to be a beach bum. There's not enough sunscreen for
Yeah.
that. So whenever I was in college, and look, I think like a lot of people, you never know really what you want to do. But when that guy came in and said, "Hey, you're pretty good with people. You ought to do what I do," and it's really about serving people with their insurance needs. Man, that's when I found my passion and my purpose, and ultimately my why and the infinite game that we're playing here to keep going and serving more people with their life, health, and wealth needs. And so it's been look, I think this is an incredible country. You can do anything you want. I wasn't smart enough to be a cardiologist. I'm not good looking enough or have the right complexion to be a beach bum. So this is all I got today, and I'm proud to be here.
Well, Brian, turns out you have actually operated on the heart. You've created a heart-centered, people-driven company that actually
Hmm.
serves people at such a critical stage of life. in some pretty powerful ways. And as you know, you've built a company of family members, if you like, and you know, you're serving community at small town family values at scale in big city, you know, business environments. And so I really appreciate the time you've given us today, the things you've walked through and shared with us. And I know particularly, you know, for young people listening to this, don't lose sight of just how important people are at the center of everything, and at the same time make the greatest use of technology you possibly can to enhance that. Bryan, thanks so much for giving us this time and sharing your wisdom.
Hey, thanks so much. This has been a blessing, and really hope that you can continue to serve more people, and I can't wait to watch more episodes on how you're sharing wisdom all over the world. So thanks so much. God bless you.
Thank you very much.